couples of Reddit. What's the most unromantic thing that's happened between the two of you that actually is a stronger indication of love than others might think? My husband got diarrhea so bad that it went everywhere in our bathroom, and I accidentally sat in it. I cleaned everything off and jumped in the shower to clean his poop off while he was still going. I started puking in the shower from the awful seafood food poisoning smells. He says his time for me is us waiting in a drive-through line, and I sneezed a giant snot rocket all over my shirt and freaked out trying to hide it and find a tissue. I fell down some steps and broke both my arms. My husband wiped my butt and helped me shower wash my hair. For weeks. For better or worse, that was definitely filed under worse. For a minute I thought this was going to turn into the dang story about the guy with the broken arms and his mom. Instead it was sweet. Thank goodness. When we'd been married about 10 years, 2 little kids, jobs not paying enough to cover daycare and bills, and were having the sort of fight that these stresses can precipitate. It was a nasty one. We were not holding back with unkind things said to each other. And then the phone rang. My dad was in the hospital 1,200 miles away. He'd had a stroke. Docs were unsure whether he'd live. The fight stopped and she told me to get in the car and go to the airport. She'd have tickets waiting for me at the counter. She'd call my boss and explain that I was flying across the country. Take how much time I needed. She would take care of the house and the kids and to not worry about anything but taking care of my family. Dad made it a few years after that, but now I know that no matter how hard life gets, and however much two volatile pig-headed jerks fight and yell, she isn't just on my team, she is my team. We'll be married 30 years this year. Life happens, and sometimes people aren't perfect, but when the world is against me, that little woman will grab my arm and we'll roar together, and nothing will break us. This is so much better than the poop stories. Man, all of these are like medical conditions and crazy stuff like that. One time my girlfriend just said she wanted to see me but didn't want to talk to anybody after a rough day at work. So she came to my house and sat in my bed with me while I played video games until we both fell asleep. Didn't say a word other than hey when she got there, and alright, bed. Love you. I'm away for work right now and had a really tough day. I called my husband and he instantly knew something was wrong. I told him just to talk to me. He told me about his day, and when he ran out of things, he read me a Wikipedia article about different types of pastry dough. So's that can support you through the little days are the best. I grew up with my grandparents BC. Both my parents had to work various jobs simultaneously, so my grandfather was my world. I took care of him during his last 5 years, when he became bedridden. I tried to visit him as often as I could. He lived with an elderly aunt who fed him, but needed me to bathe him and, eventually, change his diapers and so on. Early in our relationship, my now wife would come over sometimes. One time I got to his house and found his fridge full and him watching TV, eating a bowl of ice cream. My wife had gone a few hours before me without telling me. 6 months later I proposed. My boyfriend made me go to the gynecologist to talk about getting an ablation after watching me struggle from crippling pain and bleeding every month for years. He said not to worry about money or anything else besides solving my problem. Fast forward 2 months and I got a call from my surgeon. Apparently I missed the fact that they did a biopsy when they removed my polyps and found uterine cancer. Had I been stubborn and continued to ignore my miserable periods for years, who knows what could have happened to me. No one expects uterine cancer in someone under 30. He held me while I cried, took me to every appointment, and helped me when I recovered after my hysterectomy. That dude is my rock. The last few years before my mother passed away, she had horrible diarrhea and had lost most of her mobility, so it was not uncommon for her to be unable to make it out of the bed, much less to the bathroom. Every time this would happen, my old man would get up, get her to the bathroom and cleaned up, then go back into the bedroom, pull the sheets off their bed, put them in the wash, and finish off with putting fresh clean sheets down. Oh, and he wasn't in much better health himself, but he never complained. That's really sweet. My boyfriend texted me one day when he was at the gym that he believed his rectum had prolapsed. No idea how, but I started googling what we needed to do about it. I read that if it wasn't serious, you could just push it back in before going to a doctor, instead of heading to the ER. So what do? Put on a pair of gloves, lube my finger up, and kneel in front of him while he's lying on the bed attempting to push part of his rectum back into his anus. Turns out it was just a giant freaking hemorrhoid when he went to the doctors the next day. But I think that was a moment in our relationship where it was established that we both had complete comfort with each other. If your partner can try and shove part of your rectum up into your butt, then nothing is really too disgusting or gross to discuss. My husband and I often end up showering together, and one night as he was about to get in he said, "Never mind, I'll clean up and get some food ready for you and let you shave your butthole in peace." That is truly beautiful. My wife and I came to understand that we can sleep apart for the sake of comfort and good rest, without it being an expression of emotional distance. When my husband and I first got married, we bought a king-size bed and our own blankets. Best decision we ever made. Saved us so much arguing. Some people I've told think it weird, but I am free to cocoon in my blankets and he is free to only sleep under a sheet. Neither of us snore, so it works well. I have a now 12-year-old daughter who is not biologically his. However, she calls him dad now and he always refers to her as his daughter. When she was about 10, he'd been moved in about 6 months. We were settling into things as a family. I was working and they were home hanging out and she got her first period. I had briefly had a couple small discussions, enough that she knew what was happening, but was pretty unsure what to do. So he handed her some toilet paper, told her the basic girl trick of putting it in her underwear and took her to the store. He helped her pick out some pads, detoured to the ice cream, chocolate, chips and bakery section and picked up Junior Advil just in case. They settled in on the sofa. He explained the basics of how to use it, showed her a quick YouTube video, made up a hot water bottle for her, popped her dirty clothes on to soak, and they snuggled and she talked about it and they googled answers if he didn't have them. I came home to them having a nap on the sofa looking like a slumber party exploded into a happy child. Probably one of the moments I've loved him the most. Holy crap, I went to bed and this blew up. I was expecting it to get buried with how busy the thread already was. I'll try to respond to everyone. My husband's family lived across the country and used to send us boxes of their almost new, good quality clothes that they no longer wore. The men clothes were great for hubby and sons, but the female clothes were always a bit too small as I had gained a lot of weight since they had seen me last. My husband always felt so bad for me. Then one time, my hubby lifted up a pair of pants out of the box and said happily, "These will fit you. They're huge." I still remember the look of horror that passed over his face once he'd realized what he'd said, but I love the fact that he was happy for me getting a new pair of pants. I'm laughing really hard at this. My so puked in the parking lot on our first date. Before we even got into the restaurant, I thought she was having second thoughts because she just got out of a horrible relationship. Nope, she was on her period and it was bad enough where she would puke. We're married now. If a woman is on a date with you, on her period, that's bad enough she will throw up in the parking lot. She really likes you or she has no food at home. My first child was a stillborn, holding my wife while we both bawled our eyes out as she vomited on me and bled all over the bathroom floor. It's a memory that will stick with me forever. He was an amazing dad when I had postpartum anxiety and depression, and he'd never been around babies before or even had siblings. He was just a natural. He never resented me and just took care of us. When Prozac made it way worse, my crappy doctor wouldn't return my calls. He got us all dressed and we went and sat in that doctor's office until he would see us. He was my biggest advocate. It was so hard on me to see him bonding with our baby and being a kick-butt dad while I couldn't muster any feelings for the baby and just wanted to disappear. But all is good now and I am still so happy that our daughter has such an awesome dad. I had an ingrown hair cyst surgically removed from my butt crack. My sew had to help me stuff new gauze in the 1.5-inch hole in my flesh so it could heal properly. I bent over the bed while she removed the gauze used during surgery and she did her best. I ended up having to pull it out myself in the bathroom, leaving blood all over the floor and myself. Even after the trauma of trying to remove the first gauze, she came back to help me get the new gauze in place after I cleaned up. We called it my double butthole. Yes, it was a pilonidal cyst. The hairball the surgeon pulled out was the size of a quarter. I showed my girlfriend the comments and she said, "OMG, that really was traumatic for everyone involved." During her first pregnancy, my wife vomited brown, congealed blood every night for her entire second trimester. We went to multiple doctors and took a few trips to the ER. Never got a reason why. The vomiting happened every night after midnight, sometimes continuing sporadically for 8 hours. Don't know why, but it never happened during the daytime. One night, she thought she was finally doing better, so she went to sleep early and seemed fine. Then suddenly around 1 AM, she jolted awake, which instantly woke me, and tried to run to the bathroom to puke, forgetting the puke bucket on her bedside table in her moment of panic. Unfortunately, she slipped and fell on her side. Nothing hit her belly, and puked blood all over the carpet. She immediately started sobbing. That poor woman went through such a rough time. So I carefully picked her up, took her to the bathroom, held her hair back while she finished throwing up, then cleaned her face and got her some water to rinse her mouth out. I carried her to bed and then got to work cleaning up the carpet. We were just kids, still in college together. Those 3 months of misery galvanized our relationship. Nothing serious has ever come between us in the years since. Just wanted to add, another great side effect of constantly seeing disgusting fluids erupt out of my wife is that we're both completely comfortable around each other's bodily functions. None of this "I don't want my husband to know I poop" nonsense. We were actually on a romantic getaway weekend in the mountains. I was still breastfeeding at the time. Right as we were getting ready for dinner, I had to break it to him that I had a plugged duct and it was threatening to ruin our whole night, if not the whole weekend. I was very uncomfortable and I was worried about getting mastitis. My man went to town on that boob and sucked the plug out. I can't describe how awkward it is to breastfeed your own husband, but he had absolutely no qualms about helping me out. For some reason, the practicality of this situation makes the image of it hilarious. Nursing my late husband through squamous cell carcinoma and thyroid cancer. Diagnosed end of November. Went into hospice. At home. End of February. Died the 21st of March. I took time off work most days just to be with him and feed him and give him his meds. I had to convince him that he wouldn't become addicted to morphine since he was actually in hospice, so he finally started taking it every time I offered it. My mom, an RN and cancer research nurse for 52 years, couldn't believe how much I stepped up and took over my husband's care. He is the love of my life. All I can do for him is make him comfortable, so that was my priority. I am going to do everything in my power to make him comfortable through the end of a freaking butthole of a disease. He died at home, but we had been able to say "I love you, thank you, and goodbye." I miss him every day, even 4 years later. I'm so sorry for your loss. Not everyone can or will step up when a loved one is sick. Caretakers don't get recognized enough for the amount of work required. I can only imagine your husband appreciated every single thing you did for him, especially in this time of need. Hope you're doing okay. My wife passes out a lot. It has to do with a medical condition she has, but it can happen at almost any time. I've become so good at recognizing how she feels that I know when she's going to go before she does, and I've gotten very good at catching her. It may look unromantic, and it can be, but her knowing I'm there and me recognizing her signs are a big thing for us. No, we don't currently have a service dog. We have a golden doodle who failed out of service dog school though, lol. Her condition is POTS, and she normally only passes out when standing. She goes through episodes, sometimes passing out several times a day and needing to be hospitalized. Other times she goes weeks or months without passing out, and she is a nurse. IDK, catching someone who's swooning sounds pretty romantic to me. My wife was so sick, like could barely stand sick. She crawled to the toilet and was rolling and groaning from stomach pain. She's never been able to make herself vomit on command. I got her over the toilet, had her take a few deep breaths, and jammed my fingers down her throat. With warning and permission, she demon spewed all over my hand in the toilet. Pretty chunky and sticky, but she felt so much better. As a girl that also cannot make herself vomit on command, this is really selfless. When my husband and I first married, I had a surgery to remove a tumor from my chest. The surgery site ended up infected, and for about 3 months he would have to stuff the site with gauze so we could allow it to heal from the inside out. Was so disgusting. I could not do it myself because it was so painful. He was always so amazing about changing the dressing around it, and I really think it cemented the whole mentality of us versus the world thinking. We just celebrated our 11-year anniversary and are going strong. Definitely pranking each other thoroughly. I spent a little more than a year randomly sending him emails from a man named Nolan. He works in customer service, and I made the most ridiculous case for him to solve involving a balloon business. Once in a while, during a slow time at my job, good old Nolan would email him. Last message was about Nolan asking the hubs to join him in a doomsday bunker. I finally decided to tell him the truth on our anniversary, which is on the 1st of April. He got me back this Christmas. He anonymously sent me a super low rent Chevy Chase coloring book. I greatly dislike Chevy Chase, to put it mildly. He enjoyed me plotting revenge against my friends, and even egged me on. He finally admitted the truth on New Year's Eve. I plan to retaliate in the near future. Best $10 I ever spent. My husband acted as the lone pallbearer for our newborn son's funeral. I carried him for nearly his whole life, and my husband carried him to his final rest. I lost my daughter 2 days before my due date in August. I read that phrase somewhere. I carried you your whole life, and I'll love you for all of mine. We cremated my daughter's remains and kept them. There was no service. My husband picked out the urn. It has a little white bird on the lid. It sits on our mantle. I'm so sorry. It's been so hard. My wife was battling cancer and couldn't poop from all the medication she was given. So I had to give her a suppository. Once it took effect, I had to stay in the bathroom and watch her because she thought she might pass out. True love. I'm prone to developing cysts. Mostly they just hang out, and sometimes go away on their own, but every once in a while one will get infected randomly. I had one such cyst on the back of my neck a few years ago. It was so painful, and I was in agony. One day, it just burst open on its own. I won't go into detail, but suffice it to say, it was really disgusting. My husband is very squeamish about these kinds of things, but without hesitation, he very lovingly made sure that all of the infectious material was purged, cleaned out the crater it left in its wake, and put antibiotic cream on it. He religiously checked and cleaned the wound twice a day until it healed, and would put clean bandages on it as needed. I don't even mind the scar it left, because it reminds me of his TLC, even though I'm 100% sure it grossed him out. Our first child was 8 weeks premature because I got preeclampsia and needed an emergency C-section. I was super freaked up from all the drugs, magnesium sulfate, anesthesia and oxycodone. When I was finally able to get out of bed and shower, he helped my crying, hormonal, leaking body sit in the shower chair and take a much needed shower, helped dry me off and put on clean pajamas and those rhino-sized pads for all the goo, back into my wheelchair, where I promptly threw up all the crap that had been pumped into me over the 24 hours after my surgery. He turned me around, wheeled me back in, and started over without even a sigh. P.S. He loves that story and peacocks around whenever I tell it. I told him how popular he was with the story here on Reddit, and he wants you all to know that he even tried to catch the barf in his hands when it came and caught my undigested pain pills. When I tell him this, he is going to want a steak for dinner. Also, for anyone curious, the baby was 2.5 pounds at birth and spent 5 weeks in NICU. She is now 8. Happy and healthy, and I went on to have another baby 2 years later that was a full-term bundle of cuteness with no drama. Now I must go make them both eggs for breakfast because they are starving. Magnesium sulfate is freaking awful. I remember my first dizzy butt shower after having my 7-week early baby as being the best one of my entire life. My husband guarded the door so I could have 15 minutes of peace and clean off 6 days worth of sweat, blood and tears. He earned a lot of points that week. I had a severe attack of gastroenteritis. It was coming out of both ends. So I'm lying in bed and I suddenly have to vomit, so I try to run to the bathroom. I fail and proceed to vomit and poop all over the floor. He cleans me, the floor and the bathroom up. tucks me back into bed with some water, gives me a kiss and strokes my greasy and tangled head till I fall asleep. Most unromantic scenario ever, but he was there to help me get through it despite how gross it was. When I tried to apologize for him having to do all that, he said, "It's fine, sweetie. I love you and I know if the roles were reversed you'd do the same. And I would too." 4 months into dating my husband, boyfriend at the time obviously, he had to take me to my colonoscopy. I didn't have any family in town and it just made sense for him to take me. Afterwards I laid in his bed while he tried to convince me to pass gas so I wouldn't be in pain. He started farting to try to make me feel better. LOL. A few hours after resting, I had to go to the obgyn to get my IUD in. So he had to take care of me all day from being sore in my nether regions. To top it off, it was his birthday. It was the single most selfless thing anyone has ever done for me. She was so sick that she was laying on the floor crapping herself and puking on herself. I carried her to the bathroom and bathed her, then put her to bed. I then cleaned up the mess. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.